There were tens of thousands of people here building the pyramids. Where's their settlement?
A long corridor inside the last of the 7 wonders of the ancient world still standing, the Great Pyramid of Giza.
For generations, we've been taught a story that feels almost unshakable. We open our history books, glance at museum plaques, or listen to tour guides, and the tale remains the same. The Great Pyramid of Giza was designed and built from the ground up by the genius of the ancient Egyptians. We're told that tens of thousands of laborers worked tirelessly, stone by stone, until Khufu's tomb touched the sky. And for most people, that explanation is enough. It fits neatly into the history we think we know. But what if that version of events is only half the truth? What if this immense monument, this symbol of civilization itself, was not entirely created during Khufu's reign, but was something the Egyptians inherited, adapted, and then claimed as their own? It's a radical thought, one that shakes the foundation of our understanding of human history. But consider this. Cultures across the world, from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, spoke of monuments left behind by those who came before. Structures, too advanced for their time, works so immense that they could not imagine building them themselves. Could Egypt's pyramids fall into that same category? What if Khufu did not start with a blank canvas, but rather a mysterious relic already standing on the Giza plateau, one he reshaped into his eternal resting place? This is not the story you'll hear on a casual museum tour, but it is a story, gaining traction in recent years as new technologies allow us to peer deeper into the stones of the Great Pyramid than ever before. Behind the familiar story lies something stranger, something far more mysterious. And today we'll dive into these bold theories, reveal the discoveries that have stunned even veteran Egyptologists, and challenge nearly everything you thought you knew about one of the world's greatest wonders. A discovery made in recent years inside the Great Pyramid has been described by some researchers as the most important archaeological revelation of the 21st century. It's not a pharaoh's golden treasure, nor some hidden scroll sealed in the darkness. It is something far less obvious and far more transformative. Using advanced scanning technology, scientists detected vast voids and chambers within the pyramid that had never been seen before. These aren't random cracks or gaps in the stone. They are large, deliberate spaces, carefully hidden within the structure, invisible to the naked eye. What purpose they served remains one of the greatest mysteries of the modern era. Were they secret passageways, ceremonial spaces, or something else entirely? For centuries, explorers and scholars chipped away at the pyramid's mystery, certain that if they dug deep enough, they would find answers. Yet the more we discover, the more baffling this monument becomes. Every stone, every hidden passage seems to whisper a different story, one that refuses to align neatly with the traditional narrative. And perhaps the most compelling clue lies not in what we've uncovered recently, but in how the pyramid once appeared to those who lived more than 4,000 years ago, because the Great Pyramid you see today, weathered, jagged, stripped of its polished skin, looks nothing like the masterpiece it once was. To understand its mystery, we have to return to the time of Khufu, to imagine what this colossal wonder looked like at the height of its glory. More than 4,500 years ago, during Egypt's 4th dynasty, Pharaoh Khufu ruled the land. To the people of his time, he was not merely a king but a god on earth, one whose reign was to be immortalized in stone. His pyramid, the largest ever built, would be a monument to his power, his divinity, and his place among the stars. But the structure his workers completed during his reign didn't look like the rugged steps of stone we see today. It was something far more magnificent. Back then, the Great Pyramid was covered entirely in dazzling white limestone, quarried from Tura and polished to such perfection that the surface gleamed like glass. Imagine standing on the desert plateau at midday, the sun blazing down, and seeing the entire monument radiate light like a colossal mirror. It was said the pyramid could be seen from miles away, glowing brilliantly against the horizon. To ancient eyes, this was not just a tomb. It was a beacon, a staircase for the soul of the pharaoh to ascend to the heavens. Every seam, every line, and every entrance was hidden beneath that casing. Unlike today, where we see rough-hewn blocks and visible pathways. In Khufu's time, the pyramid appeared as a flawless wedge of stone. No cracks betrayed an opening. No door disturbed its perfect geometry. It stood as a seamless mountain of white, a mystery even to those who lived in its shadow. But as centuries passed, that polished skin was stripped away. Earthquakes loosened stones, and later generations carted the casing blocks off to build mosques and palaces in Cairo. Slowly, the smooth surface was reduced to the uneven steps we see now. The Great Pyramid, as it appears today, is only a skeleton of its original form. Yet remembering that it was once sealed in perfection is crucial, because in that form, the pyramid betrayed no sign of an entrance at all. For generations, travelers and scholars could only stare at the monument in awe. They could circle its massive base, craning their necks toward its peak, and yet never spot a single doorway. Even in ancient times, there were whispers of a hidden block, a stone that could be shifted to reveal the way inside. But if that secret existed, it was lost long before the medieval era. By then, the pyramid seemed nothing more than a sealed vault, impenetrable and silent, holding its secrets just out of reach. The true entrance to the pyramid is located high, on the north face, about 56 feet above the ground and slightly off-center. In its original state, perfectly camouflaged beneath limestone casing, it would have been invisible to the naked eye. You could stand directly before it, trace every line of stone with your hand, and still never guess it was there. For those who dreamed of entering, the pyramid was a locked door with no key, and that mystery only deepened with time. Ancient texts spoke of treasures buried within, knowledge from the gods, or even secret chambers designed to guide the pharaoh's soul into the afterlife. Some believed the pyramid was more than a tomb, that it was a kind of machine, a conduit for energy, or a library of forgotten wisdom. Whatever the truth, its sealed exterior made the mystery all the more tantalizing. To look upon the Great Pyramid was to look upon a riddle written in stone, one that defied even the most determined seekers. It wasn't until centuries later that someone dared to break through, not by finding the original doorway, but by sheer force, carving a path where none could be seen. That story belongs to one of the most dramatic episodes in the history of the pyramid. The break-in led by the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun in the 9th century. It was an act of both desperation and curiosity, and it changed the course of pyramid exploration forever. By the 9th century, the Great Pyramid had already stood for thousands of years. Its gleaming limestone skin was still partially intact, making it appear even more mysterious to those who gazed upon it. To many, it was not only a monument of stone, but a fortress guarding untold riches. The idea that such an immense structure could stand empty was unthinkable. Surely the pharaohs had filled it with gold, with treasures, with relics that had been hidden away from the world. One man determined to uncover those secrets was the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun. In the year 820 CE, he ordered his men to break into the Great Pyramid. At that time, nobody alive knew where the true entrance was located. Stories persisted that the door lay hidden on the northern face, but no one could see it. To al-Ma'mun, the pyramid was an irresistible vault, and he was convinced that within its massive walls lay something worth discovering. Armed with chisels, picks, and sheer determination, his workers set to work. They began hacking into the northern face, roughly 23 feet above the base. The work was brutal, every block was enormous, and the pyramid seemed to resist their efforts at every turn. Day after day, the sound of metal striking stone echoed across the Giza plateau. As they carved their way inward, creating what would later be called the Robbers' Tunnel. According to legend, after weeks of labor, the men suddenly heard a loud crack from within the pyramid. Some accounts say it was the sound of a stone block shifting, possibly one of the hidden plugs that sealed the internal passages. Drawn by that sound, the workers dug toward it, and in doing so, they stumbled upon the original internal passageway. Whether this dramatic detail is true or not, historians continue to debate. But what is certain is that Al-Mamun's men eventually managed to penetrate the pyramid, forcing their way into corridors that had been sealed for millennia. What they found shocked them. Instead of the mountains of treasure they had dreamed of, the pyramid's chambers stood empty. No golden sarcophagus, no piles of jewels, no scrolls of hidden wisdom. Just stone walls, narrow passages, and a silence that had lasted for thousands of years. To Al-Mamun it must have seemed like a bitter disappointment. Here he had gone to such lengths, carving his way into the heart of the world's most famous monument, only to discover bare, echoing chambers. And yet, what he left behind became just as important as what he found. The tunnel his men created still exists today. Visitors who enter the Great Pyramid often begin their journey not through the original hidden doorway, but through this rough corridor, a scar in the stone that remains as a testament to that 9th century expedition. Every tourist who walks through it retraces the steps of Al-Mamun's men, stepping from the bright desert into the darkness that so captivated the caliph. The caliph's break-in marked a turning point in the history of the pyramid. For the first time in centuries, human eyes once again gazed upon its inner passages. But far from solving its mystery, the intrusion only deepened it. Why were the chambers empty? Had the treasures been stolen long before, perhaps in antiquity, or was the pyramid never meant to house riches at all? Was its purpose something entirely different, something lost to time? Theories abounded. Some said the treasures had been spirited away to secret chambers, still hidden behind walls no one had yet discovered. Others claimed that the Egyptians themselves had removed the goods to keep them safe from grave robbers. And there were those who argued that the Great Pyramid was not a tomb in the first place, but a ceremonial or symbolic structure, one whose true function remains a riddle. Whatever the case, Al-Mamun's tunnel became the gateway for all future exploration. Through that rough passage, scholars, explorers, and dreamers entered the pyramid, searching for answers. And beyond that entry point lay the descending passage, a dark, narrow corridor that pulled visitors deep into the belly of the structure, and deeper still into the mystery of what this monument was truly meant to be. The first thing a visitor encounters when entering the Great Pyramid through the original doorway is not a grand hall or an elaborate chamber, but something surprisingly modest in the descending passage. This corridor slopes downward at an angle of about 26 degrees, cutting directly through the core of the pyramid before plunging into the bedrock below. On paper, it may not sound intimidating. In person, it is another matter entirely. The passage is narrow, less than 4 feet high and only a little wider than the span of a man's shoulders. To move through it, most people must stoop, crouch, or even shuffle sideways, scraping backpacks and shoulders against the cold limestone walls. The deeper you go, the more oppressive it feels. Sunlight disappears almost instantly, and the air grows still, heavy with silence. It is like descending into the lungs of the earth itself, each step carrying you further away from the world above. For the ancient Egyptians, this descent had profound meaning. They believed the passage symbolized the path to the underworld, a journey the soul would take after death. To step into it was to step into myth, into a corridor that blurred the line between the realm of the living and the domain of the gods. Whether Khufu himself ever set foot inside is unknown, but the design was intentional, as if to remind all who entered that they were leaving behind the world of light for the mysteries of eternity. The passage stretches for more than 300 feet, a seemingly endless tunnel of stone. The floor slopes downward in an unbroken line, so that walking it feels less like entering a building and more like sliding slowly into darkness. Your footsteps echo faintly, then vanish, swallowed by the sheer weight of the pyramid pressing down from above. Every so often the walls change, shifting from carefully cut limestone blocks to the rougher texture of natural bedrock. It is a subtle reminder that this structure is not just built upon the earth. It has been carved directly into it. Near the end of the passage, the descent levels off into a crawl space barely tall enough to move through comfortably. For some, this final stretch is the most unsettling. The ceiling presses low, the stone feels close, and the silence is absolute. And then, without warning, the tunnel opens into a chamber cut directly into the rock, the so-called subterranean chamber. This room is unlike any other in the pyramid. It is rough, unfinished, its walls jagged rather than smooth. Unlike the precise geometry of the upper chambers, this space feels almost primitive, as though it was carved hastily or abandoned before completion. Scholars have debated its purpose for centuries. Was it an early attempt at a burial chamber that was later abandoned in favor of higher levels? Was it symbolic, a space meant to represent the underworld itself? Or could it have been something entirely different? A hidden feature whose true function has yet to be uncovered? Standing there, one can't help but feel the weight of history pressing in. Above your head, millions of tons of stone rest silently, arranged with such precision that they have stood unshaken for nearly 5,000 years. Around you, darkness stretches into corners untouched by light for millennia. The air is heavy, the silence almost alive, as though the pyramid itself is holding its breath, waiting for you to understand its secret. Explorers who have entered this chamber often describe the same sensation: awe mixed with unease. It feels as though the space was never meant to be entered, as though it was designed not for the living, but for something else entirely. And perhaps that is the true mystery of the Great Pyramid. For all our theories, for all our discoveries and scans and measurements, we still do not know exactly why it was built. Was it truly Khufu's tomb, stripped bare by thieves in antiquity? Was it a ceremonial monument, never intended to hold treasure at all? Or was it something far older, a relic of a forgotten age that Khufu claimed as his own? The pyramid does not answer. It only stands, as it has for thousands of years, a riddle in stone that continues to defy explanation. And maybe that is why it captivates us still. Because in a world where so much has been explained, dissected, and catalogued, the Great Pyramid remains a question mark on the horizon, a monument that dares us to imagine what truths might still lie hidden within its heart. While the subterranean chamber leaves visitors with more questions than answers, it is only the beginning of the pyramid's inner labyrinth. For those who choose not to follow the descending path deeper into the bedrock, there is another option, a hidden junction that leads upward. This shift from descent to ascent feels symbolic, almost deliberate, as if the pyramid itself is guiding you from darkness toward a higher truth. From the junction, a narrow passage climbs steeply upward, until it opens into what has been called the Queen's Chamber. Unlike the rough walls of the subterranean chamber, this room is carefully cut, its proportions deliberate. But curiously, there is no evidence that any queen was ever buried here. The chamber is empty, its walls unadorned, its purpose enigmatic. Scholars debate whether it was ever intended as a burial place at all, or whether it served a symbolic function, perhaps representing the womb of the earth or a spiritual threshold in the pharaoh's journey. But the real wonder lies just beyond. Continuing upward, explorers enter one of the most awe-inspiring spaces inside the pyramid, the Grand Gallery. Stretching nearly 150 feet long, with soaring walls that rise over 26 feet high, this space is unlike anything else in ancient architecture. The gallery narrows as it ascends, its corbelled walls stacked with extraordinary precision, creating a sense of both grandeur and mystery. Walking its length feels like entering a cathedral, built not for people, but for gods. No one knows for certain why the Grand Gallery was built on such a scale. Was it a passage designed for ceremonial processions? A symbolic bridge between the earthly and the divine? Or did it serve a practical purpose, perhaps in the construction of the upper chambers? Some researchers believe the gallery once held massive stone portcullises, sliding blocks designed to seal off the burial chamber from intruders. Others argue it may have had a more esoteric function, aligning with the stars or amplifying energy in ways we still cannot fully understand. Whatever its role, the Grand Gallery remains one of the most breathtaking mysteries of the pyramid. At its summit lies the most famous room of all, the so-called King's Chamber. Unlike the Queen's Chamber, this room is lined with enormous blocks of red granite hauled all the way from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. The effort required to transport and position these stones defies belief. Within the chamber rests a single object, a massive granite sarcophagus, lidless, empty, and uninscribed. Its presence raises more questions than it answers. Why was the sarcophagus unfinished? Why are there no inscriptions or hieroglyphs dedicating it to Khufu, as would be expected in a royal tomb? Some say it was plundered in antiquity, its treasures stolen long before Al-Mamun ever arrived. Others suggest Khufu was never buried here at all, that the chamber served a different purpose entirely. The lack of decoration is especially puzzling, as even modest Egyptian tombs are covered in inscriptions to guide the soul in the afterlife. But here, in the heart of the greatest pyramid of them all, we find only bare granite walls and an empty box. Above the chamber, hidden from view, are a series of small relieving chambers, each stacked atop the other to divert the immense weight of the pyramid away from the room below. In the highest of these spaces lies one of the only pieces of direct evidence linking the pyramid to Khufu. Quarry marks scrawled in red ochre, naming the pharaoh and the work crews that supposedly built it. For Orthodox Egyptologists, these marks confirm Khufu's ownership. For skeptics, they raise suspicions. Could they have been added later, a kind of ancient signature forged to cement the official story? Standing in the king's chamber, surrounded by granite polished with astonishing precision, it is hard not to feel a sense of awe. Every block is immense, yet fitted so closely that even a blade of grass cannot slide between them. The chamber resonates with sound, humming when a voice echoes within it, as though the very stone is alive with energy. To many, this is not the final resting place of a king, but the beating heart of a machine, a space designed for a function we have yet to comprehend. And it is here, at the very center of the pyramid, that the mystery deepens once more. Because, in recent years, advanced scans have revealed something astonishing. Vast voids hidden above the Grand Gallery, spaces no human has entered in thousands of years, or perhaps ever. What lies within those voids remains unknown. They may be structural, a byproduct of the pyramid's engineering, or they may be hidden chambers, deliberately concealed, waiting for the day humanity rediscovers their purpose. The deeper we look, the more the pyramid refuses to yield its secret. Every new discovery is not an answer but another question, and perhaps that is why it has endured for so long in our imagination, because it is not just a tomb or a monument, but a puzzle that continues to defy us, daring us to solve it. For generations, mainstream Egyptology has insisted that the Great Pyramid was nothing more than the tomb of Pharaoh Khufu. Yet the absence of a body, the lack of inscriptions, and the staggering complexity of its design have opened the door to alternative theories, some controversial, some imaginative, and some that challenge everything we think we know about history. One of the most enduring ideas is that the pyramid was not merely a tomb, but a kind of machine. Researchers have long noted that the king's chamber resonates with sound in unusual ways, amplifying vibrations and producing frequencies that seem almost deliberate. Some have suggested that the pyramid once functioned as a giant energy generator, harnessing natural forces of the earth in ways we cannot yet replicate. The idea sounds far-fetched, yet when you stand in the chamber and feel the stone vibrating beneath your feet, it is easy to imagine that the ancient builders were working, with knowledge long since lost. Others point to the pyramid's alignment with the stars. The shafts leading from the queen's chamber and the king's chamber appear to align with specific constellations, Orion, Sirius, and others that held deep significance in Egyptian mythology. To the ancient mind,